Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's discussion panel. I'm really excited. I was just saying earlier that it feels like this is a way for me to make a lot of new friends, and now you guys all get to meet each other. And so this is a cool opportunity for me. And each of you comes with a really unique perspective. So I'm excited to pitch questions to you guys. Really looking forward to it. And then for those joining in the audience, welcome and thank you so much for being here. Obviously, we wanted to connect with you in a more direct, interpersonal way. And so this is one way that we can do it, even though we're across the country or across the world from each other. So so this will be a recorded session. And so, but just so everyone knows, when I download the recording, let me check my sound. Let me see here.
I just lost my sound. Sorry.
Okay. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Let me try one thing. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Well, if you don't know what to do, just unplug something and plug it back in. That seemed to work. All right, sweet. Well, just so audience members know, I'll be recording this, but if you want to participate, of course, chat is the perfect place to do that. When I export the video, I'll include our faces, but not the chat. And so that'll remain more private for you. And that way you get a chance to jump in and participate. So, and I'll be trying to track the chat. I also have a few questions from people that submitted them beforehand, so I can throw those into the mix as well. And let me pull this up here. And then one of the things, so I'll have you guys introduce yourselves, but you guys each take a very different point of view or have a different area of expertise as it relates to this. And so, don't feel obligated to answer every question if it's not, your area of expertise. Hey, Bob, welcome.
Hey, sorry, I had my timing mixed up. So,
well, I'm glad we caught you.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we've jumped into the recording, Bob. So, but the sound's looking good, and video and all of that. So, but I was just saying, I'll have you guys introduce yourselves, and then with all these questions, feel free to just kind of pipe in. I won't necessarily take turns or anything like that. And so, if you guys want to ask each other follow-up questions, respectfully challenge each other, counter opinions and whatnot, I'd be excited to do that. So, and then let me start with a question of my own while we get warmed up and the audience members can start chatting questions. So I was looking for okay, what's a unifying thread for all of you? Because for some of you, it's alternative perspectives or relationship versus individual, or kind of the neuroscience or hormones and activation, behavioral activation and things. And so I guess one thing that stood out to me is that each of those angles probably has different daily work. Like what do we do day by day in order to grow and develop in our relationships, in our attunement with our body, in managing, our optimal brain functioning or whatever else that might be. So I'm curious. I'll just throw that out to you guys, and feel free to mute and unmute yourselves as you get there. Actually, let me back up. I do want to do the introductions. So we'll take turns there, of course. So Heather, do you want to do a quick intro for yourself, and then we'll go from there?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's coming through.
Okay. Everything about my mic and headphones just crashed, so we're good.
Okay, it's working.
All right, yeah, so my name is Heather Neilsen. I'm founder of Fight the Beast. So we have a men's, specifically porn recovery organization. And I started out with just a chaotic past of relationships and family problems dealing with pornography, to the point where I realized how big this problem is, which led me to really become passionate about recovery and helping people recover.
Yeah.
So yeah, since we've developed resources and tools and coaching and all that.
Yep. Right. Well, and your interview and most others include a lot more thorough kind of backstory and stuff
right,
like
yeah,
that.
I'm not sure what you want. Like that gives a little context.
Yep, that's perfect. 30-second intro. That's perfect. Okay. Thank you, Heather. Dr. Leigh, do you want to introduce yourself really quick?
Yeah, hey, I'm Dr. Trish Leigh. Are we echoey? Do we need to mute ourselves?
Yeah.
First of
Let's
all,
all mute ourselves when we're not talking. That might prevent some feedback here.
okay, I was going to mute myself, but that's not me. Okay, so hey, I'm Dr. Trish Leigh. Thanks for having me. Taylor and I had an awesome conversation, so I'm really excited to be here. Just like Heather, I think actually I think it's a running joke in this field that you get into it because it landed in your lap at some point and you care, and you care so much you want to help everybody else. Well, that's the position that I'm in. I've had a private practice using neurofeedback. I call myself a cognitive neuroscientist. I started as a speech language pathologist a long time ago, but across my journey I've gained degrees and experience in neuroscience, which led me to become certified as a sex addiction recovery coach. And honestly, I made one video and I put it on YouTube. I'm saying nothing neuroscientific, but I'm saying from my heart, porn damages your brain. You need to stop watching porn for an optimal, authentic life. And that video was viewed by a lot of people and they asked for more. So I started making consistent content. I also was a college professor for a very long time, and I was trained in how to make digital university courses. So I applied that skill set to porn addiction recovery. I have a digital program. We also offer coaching. I offer neurofeedback online so I can work with people across the world, and I do, which is very exciting. I also started a partners program called Sanity After Betrayal, and we're working with women too. So I'm glad to be in the space because I feel like I'm making the impact that I always was meant to make. So thank you for having me here.
Awesome. Dr. Leigh, thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Happy to have you on board. Okay. All right. Dr. Stockwell, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, my pleasure. I'm Alexandra Stockwell. I'm a physician. I'm no longer practicing medicine. I am a relationship and intimacy coach. And my focus is really on how to create a sensually alive, emotionally connected, intimate relationship that is suitable and really fits the personalities of the two people in the couple. And I really teach people how to create a culture in your marriage where you both can thrive, stop compromising, stop settling in the sense of limited self-expression. So my focus isn't specifically on pornography or porn recovery, but of course, one of the things that happens once a couple, most often a man, stops the porn, finds a way to break the bad habit and addiction, then what? And so often, both of them are used to really demonizing sexuality, considering it the source of problems. And so my focus is really on how to create healthy intimacy after porn addiction and instead of porn addiction.
Okay, sorry for the awkward delay. I'm messing with settings.
That's
and
okay.
everything
I mean, I can keep talking for anyone who wants more of that. My podcast, the Intimate Marriage Podcast, sometimes I focus on communication. Sometimes I focus on how to be more present and enjoy more pleasure and sexuality. But I just want to be really clear. I'm speaking to any adult in a committed relationship wanting to experience more vitality and enjoy bodies as a way of doing that. And I don't actually talk specifically about porn that much, but I'm really grateful to be part of this summit because I'm answering the question which hopefully arises once you let go of porn, what's next? Because there's so much that's
Right.
possible that people who never get into porn addiction don't necessarily know either. So that's what I'm here to
Right.
contribute. And I'm ready to pass the baton whenever you're ready to take it. I could talk for an hour and a half, but that's not what we're here for.
I'll take it. Yeah.
Okay,
Hey, thanks
you
so
got
much.
it.
Yeah.
No awkward pauses. Although I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of awkwardness, that has its role
Sometimes
because
it's therapeutic.
if you try to avoid it, that is a real limitation in having great sex. So awkwardness has its place. And back to you.
Okay, perfect. I've got plenty of the awkwardness. So, um, all right. Well, wonderful. Yeah. And, running into your material on being uncompromising was really refreshing and useful. I remember reading one of the emails that you send and just forwarded it to my wife and like, oh, this is us, right? And so very relevant stuff. And yeah, very much so. Like as we break habits and kind of get away from some of the unwanted behavior, we have to know exactly where we're headed. So for most individuals, we're aiming for intimacy. So, okay, Bob, how about you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the guy that messed everything up. I went down the rabbit hole. I spent 18 years addicted to pornography and looking for sexual reprieve from all of the stress or all the anxiety or all of the limiting beliefs inside of myself. I went through all of the programs that were available to me at the time. I tried some counseling, I tried therapy, I tried online programs, anonymous programs, like just self-help programs, every which way. I read books, I looked at childhood trauma, I did all the things, and I was still struggling until finally I had a moment of realization that if I didn't do something different, then I was just going to be in that struggle for the rest of my life. So I went and figured it out on my own. And the method that I used to approach this was to go past the notion that addiction is a thing, to go past the notion that depression is a thing, which was something I was also dealing with, and suicidal ideation, and to go back down to where those things, quote unquote, might come from. And I ended up finding a method of using the body itself and the sort of practical things that any human being on the planet could have that doesn't have fancy gadgets and gizmos and stuff, to use the body and the breath, tension, relaxation, movement things to retrain my natural instincts so that I got rid of triggers, so that I eliminated all of the limiting beliefs and core beliefs that were on the inside of me, and ended up finding absolute freedom where the urges went away and everything went away, and I didn't have to maintain it. Freedom without maintenance, to me, was what I really wanted, because I had things to do with my life. Then I went about my merry business and I didn't help anybody with it because I'm a weirdo in my brain, or at least I was at the time. And I was like, nobody else is going to deal with this, until I had a business coach talk to me, and he's like, are you serious? Like, you're doing this other thing over here, which I was doing a lot of body therapies and other things. And he's like, but there's a bajillion people struggling with porn addiction, and really nobody knows what they're talking about. They're all guessing. They're doing the best that they know how. It's your obligation. He intimidated the heck out of me, by the way. And so I was like, oh dear. And he's like, it's your obligation. You got 3 days, go get it done. And so I put a video online initially, and then a second one, a third one. My wife jumped in and we shared some of her story, and those have been pretty impactful videos for a lot of people. And we started there. I started using these body-based methods to retrain a pornography addiction for people who are only dealing with pornography and sexual addiction. Then the wives started asking, but is this only for guys? And I was like, well, no, because we're not really addressing porn, because that's not the problem. That was the solution to the problem. So we're addressing the actual issue. And so if your problem is betrayal or, body image stuff and whatnot, so we opened that up. And since then, we've helped thousands of people get rid of PTSD, even years of chronic pain, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, OCD, bipolar, like all of these different things, using simple, direct body-based methods of addressing what it's all built on, which is the state your body is in at any given point in time. You address that, you train that, and then you just have an instinct of happiness. So that's my intro.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. As you can all tell, like we're all coming at this from very different angles, very unique perspectives, which I really love. I think that's probably my favorite part of this kind of event, is that we've got all kinds of points of view, and I get to check in with so many different ways of approaching this. So yeah. Oh, Heather, I think you are on mute. There it is.
I was saying you need to introduce yourself as well, because we have viewers from all over.
True. Yeah, many of you are new to my world as well, so I'll do that for sure. So my name is Taylor, and I'm a marriage and family therapist. And for a lot of my career, so one of the first areas that I was trained in was sex addiction and pornography addiction. I became really interested because of my own struggles with pornography and wanting to kind of, find my own path, my own solutions and all of that. And having found some things, I was admittedly a bit naive and thinking like, okay, hey, I've figured some things out and I just got to go kind of tell other people how I did it and, and go from there. And but what I didn't realize that I was kind of still in the thick of my journey and that I wasn't kind of like at that final arrival point, which, honestly, I still don't feel like I'm at. I think many of us would kind of acknowledge we're somewhere on the journey, right? Um, and so I guess what happened was that for me, I really leaned into a lot of the training that I was receiving and kind of adopted one point of view, one perspective, and then found that over the last several years in particular, I really wanted to kind of reboot my approach and lean more into I guess I would say mindfulness points of view and systemic points of view, kind of going back to my first training because I was trained as a marriage and family therapist in particular ways. And then I kind of got some addiction training, which made me maybe more behavioral focused instead of systemic, which is when I say systemic, I mean like relationships and kind of the context around people. And so kind of going back and bringing some of my earliest training to this topic, which has been a really interesting journey for me. And so I'm finding more and more of the fearless sexuality and trying to help other people do the same. So thanks for the invite to introduce myself. Sometimes I assume you guys have heard enough from me through all the interviews, but yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into some of these questions then. So let me kick off with kind of this initial theme that I wondered about is kind of what is the daily work? What does that all look like from your point of view? So again, whether it is some of the behavioral activation, the neuroscience, relationships, body-based work, a lot of times we get these big ideas, and I was curious, how is it that you help clients or even in your own life break it down to like daily practices or routines, habits, things like that? So whoever wants to start us off, we'll kind of start free flowing right now.
I'm happy to go.
Dr. Leigh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can jump in. Oh, go ahead, Bob, if you're.
Yeah, let's go, Bob, and then Dr.
Yeah,
Leigh,
sure.
we'll catch you right
Okay.
after that.
Sounds great.
So the first thing I do is I get rid of the word work because everybody has some sort of like mental thought process around the idea of the daily work. Now, some people find work a really inspiring word, but most of the people I'm dealing with, they're already working so hard at so many other things that when they have to do daily work, we get rid of it. So most of it's like daily play, curiosity, wonder, excitement, what really gets you going. For me, the processes are breath, movement. They're simple things that start to retune the body, train the system, release hormones, and all these other things that put the body in a state of happiness. And when they've trained that, then whatever in their life gets them to that point. That's the thing that they do. And they're often things that bring that they're hobbies, they're things that they love to do. But we start with some basic body practices of breathing, of movement, of tension and release, of things that kind of reset the data coming up to the mind about whether or not the person is stressed and anxious and whatnot. And when they get this reset in the morning, in the evening, and stuff like that, then all of a sudden they sleep better, they wake up better, and then they're meeting their day in a totally different state. And as that continues, then all the other stuff starts to fall away on its own. So the daily work really is about understanding and feeling what does happiness and joy and this state of freedom actually feel like, and then using specific practices to get there, and then they monitor that throughout the day.
Okay, awkward silence. There we go.
Yeah, I can jump in.
Please,
springboarding off of what Bob was saying is that I've actually had this thought on my mind a lot lately, is that it really matters what day it is. And you know how you said, like, I didn't even totally realize, but I was still in the thick of it. And maybe I still am to a certain degree. And that, to me, it goes back to self-regulation. So on a really regulated day, which a regulated day means your brain is as close to the optimal performance pattern in terms of using electrical energy as it can be. So on a regulated day, the things you need to do that day are very different than on a dysregulated day. So it really does depend on the day. And the day can very much vary based upon where you are in the continuum of recovery. You know, day 1 is totally different than day 700. But, you know, if your dog dies on day 701, it might not look like 700. It might look back like day 27 did. And so I try to help people understand the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence. Number 1 is self-awareness. Self-awareness is so low on a dysregulated day. And it literally doesn't matter where you are in this journey. When you're stressed, when you're tired, those are the main things that are going to impact people. The awareness is so low. So those are the days where you really have to double down on using the foundation that you've built across your recovery journey. And, you learn that in a program, you learn that from a coach, and you have to double down on that on the difficult days. And then on the easier days, you already know what your easier day looks like. And I think if people get aware of like checking in with themselves each morning, and my hope is that everybody has a morning routine that serves them and feeds them in a really positive way, because that can lead to a really self-regulated day. It can keep your brain in a good spot. Then you won't need, dopamine hits. As I talk about dopamine dependency a lot when it comes to porn or any other behavior. The more regulated you are, the less you need something to make you feel regulated. So it really does depend on the day.
I think that's a cool point of view that, day by day, it's going to look different. I know I've fallen into the trap of like, oh, I've had good days and this is a bad day. That means I've lost something or I've regressed, instead of just like, yeah, each day is going to bring its unique, feels and challenges.
Yeah. And it's not even a porn thing. It's a human condition thing. You know what I mean? Like 2 weeks ago, I look at myself on a day 2 weeks ago and I'm like, who was that? It was just a more stressed out version of myself that couldn't even see that in me. And then I'm like, I'm good at all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like I literally know most of it, and I'm very skillful at implementing most of it. And I had that day. So like, we're all at risk for these days. And it's just a matter of like trying to understand and trying to see it. That's the self-awareness piece. Because, and then once you know what to do, and I did that, what I did that day was I'm like, I am off. I took a lot of self-care time. I did all the things I know that will shift me back very quickly, which was really effective. And, so I had, and another thing I think people need for their days is a plan. Because you can't go into those dysregulated days with no plan. You have to know what your good day plan is, your rough day plan is, and those types of things.
Yeah, right. I look forward to my Saturdays, but then when I have an unstructured day by 11 o'clock, I'm like, what is happening here? Right.
Now what?
I can jump in here now. So,
Heather, yeah, please.
yeah, well, okay. I totally second that. There is such a change between that day 1 of porn recovery versus like day 30, day 700. And so having that plan is really crucial. One of the things that I've found in our community that we do, and with my book and the way that my book is laid out, is we focus on that 10 to 15 minute check-in a day of doing emotional work, journaling, paying attention to your body. It's a very small ask. I know everyone's busy, but that 10 to 15 minute check-in, whether it's reviewing principles, people will send and post videos in the community. I tell people, watch a porn recovery video, read a book. And then also with our program, do that 10 to 15 minutes a day check-in, because that's going to help you be more consistent in your recovery journal. A lot of people, when they start feeling good about recovery, they start forgetting about it. And they stop doing the work, and they forget about their game plans, and they forget about, the tricks and the tools and the breath work or all this other stuff that was working for them. And so I really encourage people, just make that little check-in with yourself and the recovery process and journey that you're on every day. Otherwise, you're more likely to just fall off the bandwagon. And then on top of that, we focus on 3 different areas of recovery, and that's going to be your internal work, the root causes, internal triggers, mindsets. Then there's the physical urges work, which is completely separate for guys. That is a whole, those physical urges are real. So there's the mental urges, the physical urges, and then there's those triggers, which, as you guys know, so much of that does. So there's the neurochemical side, I guess. And then there's the just those triggers, which are synapses firing in our brains, and all of this stuff that might at first feel like you can't control it, but with that consistency, all of that begins to rewire.
That's a cool perspective of kind of keeping those things in mind. And I'm hearing that kind of theme of like, we're all kind of mentioning like that check-in, like that process of like, you got to assess what's going on before you know what strategies to implement. So, yeah. Okay, Alexandra, I'll give you the last word.
Hang on, I want to add something. I mean, after Alexander's done, but just another note on this kind of theme as we go on, since I got to start and not be the one at the end.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay,
Alexandra?
well, I'm going to share, but I'm also going to refer to what's been said before because I really love how this unfolded. So, Bob, you talked about the importance of really attending to the body each day. I'm oversimplifying, but that was one of the essences of what you said. And for Dr. Trish, you talked about understanding. You used thinking and understanding and those kinds of words a lot in terms of checking in every day. And Heather, you talk more globally, but I'm just going to respond to, of course, as whole human beings, we definitely have our bodies, which are involved in porn and in great sex, our mind, which is involved in porn addiction and great sex. And I want to turn attention to feelings, which are, of course, drivers and a realm of experience. And in general, in our society, we aim to avoid most feelings. We have a very narrow range. And even if we like positive feelings more than negative feelings, our capacity to experience positive feelings is still relatively restricted as a society. Bliss and erotic ecstasy, that is not something that most people have access to, even if they like positive feelings. So the daily check-in, the daily self-awareness that I end up having most of my clients do for some amount of time is to just set an alarm on your phone 2 or 3 times a day, stop what you're doing, and just write down after noticing how you feel. I feel however it is, and that is a right way to feel. I feel stressed, and that is a right way to feel. I feel anxious, and that is a right way to feel. I feel tentatively happy, and that is a right way to feel. And the majority of my clients are high achieving, very educated professionals who are used to taking problems by the horns and creating good results. And the thing is that most of us don't even know what we're feeling. We know good, bad. When I personally first did this exercise and I thought, how do I feel? The way I felt was that I wanted the house clean. That is obviously not a feeling. that is a desire, but it is not a feeling. So I think just expanding our awareness of what our feelings are and that it is a right way to feel, not to make certain feelings bad or shameful. That is the way forward to be a more whole, ensouled, and ultimately sexually gratified person. Over to you, Bob.
So great. I think what I think is fascinating here is a lot of the research around how people operate when they're trying to strive and get things done is that there's a lot of different ways to go about it. So like Trish talks about having a plan. If you give me a plan, I will get stressed out because I don't operate on plans. I operate best in spontaneity, in distraction and diversion, and have found a way to really thrive in that regard. And then like Heather's talking about like having this daily consistency. I don't operate on consistency super well. And so like you would look at each different person's approach and you would see, holy cow, this person's saying you got to go this way. That person's saying you got to go this way. And I would say there are people on the planet, everybody functions a little bit differently. Some will thrive. Like I really do really well with the body stuff. And so because it helped to get rid of emotion, which is a lot of the drivers, from being this like oh, I'm feeling anger, as if it's a thing. Well, what exactly am I feeling? So the alarms that I have people set during the day, which brilliant idea, Alexandra, is I have them say, well, what am I feeling? And where is it in my body? And then they look at that, and then they start breathing different. They start relaxing it. And then the next question I have them say, okay, cool. What do you want to do now? So like we don't have to fix that. You just start to relax it. And then what do you want to do now? And they're no longer focusing on it. For me, particular, one of the big things I try to get the clients that I'm working with to do is to shift their focus from being in recovery, because there's nothing wrong with them. There never was. They were a brilliant human being who found a way to survive. And so far in their life, they've had a 100% success rate at surviving everything. And they found that pornography was a way that they found to survive, cope with, and everything else. So this is a measure and a mark of intelligence. It's just that right now they're realizing that it has some negative after effects. So they're ready to have a different, output. And if their body can learn to go to porn on autopilot, then it can learn to do something else on autopilot. And so for me, what I have them do is the entire focus is not on being in recovery and doing the work, but starting to discover the thing that ignites their own joy and their own happiness on autopilot. And it's different for everybody. And so that's sort of the process. So we do these daily things to kind of prime the system, because I've never seen a person who is feeling wonderful and they're like, I feel so good, I want to go look at some porn. I've never, in all my years, they feel good and then they dip after that and then they want to go look at porn. Like, but I had such a good day. Yeah, but how were you feeling right before it? Well, I don't know, I was bored. I was kind of tired after that. Okay. And so like that point of getting the body into this great state is really kind of the focus of where I'm at. But that doesn't take away from like what Heather is mentioning, like, yeah, the things that work. Go look at porn recovery videos. That's not what I wanted to do. I was not interested in spending any more of my mental focus and my time on filling my mind with more information about porn. I wanted to fill my mind with information about these joyful things that I love in life. But what Heather's doing are things that I've seen work for a lot of people, and she's seen work for a lot of people. So for anybody listening, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because like all of these things can work exceptionally well, and there isn't a right way. So if you're feeling like, oh man, I got to have a plan, I got to have this, that might be something that stresses you out, and it might be helpful, it might not. But recognize that there's a lot to be gained here, and every single one of these people has something that they're offering.
Yeah, and I would contend it's not necessarily fully a person's body who moves them towards porn. It's their brain. Their brain is what's looking for. Their brain is the, supercomputer of your body and your mind. And I totally agree with you, where part of the reason I use technology is because, there's conscious, subconscious, and unconscious drivers here. And when a person can't use a plan and can't move through a program with great ease, then it's like, okay, let's unconsciously shift your brain into a new place. And using technology, high tech,
right.
And then this way they start to feel, because, it's really wild how we will all avoid those negative feelings.
Yeah.
And when it creates more of that awareness. Yeah, go ahead.
The only thing that I would add is that your brain is everywhere. You have neurons everywhere in your body, and they all have the same level of intelligence to learn. So when I'm working with the body, I am working with the brain in the way that I look at it.
Totally. But what I love it because you're an up, I'm a top down, you're a bottom up, and it is all encompassing.
Yeah. What I love about what you're doing is because I've tested some of these like neurofeedback stuff, and it's sometimes like the only thing that gets a person to finally what you're describing, feel. And now they have something they can work with, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
That's exactly it. It's like if you're stuck and, you can't make a plan because, at a certain time, you got to figure this out. Like there has to be something, some kind of plan, some kind of discipline, to be able to move you forward. But that is, the important piece is like, okay, let's get you going in the right direction.
This is cool. I in my fearless sexuality framework that I support clients in, one of the main dialectics that we look at is kind of the balance between discipline and expression, or wise restraint and enjoyable expression are the terms that I use. and so yeah, I think that we are covering kind of that full spectrum. And Bob, you highlighted that sometimes it's good for us to play to our strengths. Sometimes we really want to challenge ourselves with developing more of the opposite. And I've noticed that for me, really solid discipline got me big results for certain stages. And then there was just a point in my development at which I had to set aside all of the existing structure and just kind of wander for a while. And I think each of us will ultimately kind of land at this different balance or this way of addressing the dialectic. But it's cool that we're talking about all sides of those. Heather?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, having discipline is something that scares a lot of people, because in any kind of compulsive behavior, you have not been able to achieve the discipline. And so I think one of the things here is that it's not about, at least for me, in terms of what programs I've seen, like, well, okay, first of all, let me just say, I loved what Bob said about everybody's going to work differently. And I tell people that on TikTok all the time on my live sessions. I tell people, you find a coach and the program and the process that work for you. I'm not saying I'm a one size fits all solution, for sure. But one of the things that I think is important is that whatever plan or like program or process that you follow, it's about helping you to develop that discipline. It's not about come to the table perfectly disciplined. It's about the processes. So with my program, it's not read 15 minutes a day about how porn will destroy your brain. It's do internal value work, do internal body work, do the mental exercises that are going to help you break down what are the mindsets holding you back, what are the beliefs that are causing this addiction, what are the foundational root causes, and help you root those out and sort them out and work through them. And so it's not just, you don't have to be afraid of that work. I think it's just find that program that resonates with you. If you are very like body intellectual, I like how you use that expression, like, great, that is a fantastic way to go.
Yeah, and I want to just add, there's what appeals to you, and also what you said, Taylor, what appeals to you and what phase of the journey. Because the people that have been my clients who have been most successful in summarily stopping the behaviors of their porn addiction, they end up essentially disciplining their sexuality, putting it in a very well demarcated box, because there are all these things that are not supposed to happen. And it's a very tender and often surprising, gentle journey to remove the discipline that is restrictive and allow out the more natural self-expression and sexual playfulness, which doesn't, of course, mean giving up discipline altogether. But I think it's a matter of where the intentionality and discipline is focused. So maybe you have a breathwork practice or a meditation practice, but your sexuality doesn't need to abide by all of these restricting rules once you're past the phase where doing that has been helpful.
Yeah, great insights. That's really cool. Let me kind of weave in one of the questions. I think in many ways we've been addressing it, and I'll use initials here. I just have a single initial A. Asks rewiring from porn use to actual sexual relations. So again, we're talking about a process that I think, if we're loosely using that term rewiring, is kind of assessing and then choosing kind of your chosen practices or programs to kind of move toward change. But specifically, this question is also introducing the relationship itself, right? From porn use to sexual relationships. So any additional thoughts on that? And then there's another question we'll get back to from before that.
So just to clarify, the question is...
So essentially, how do we rewire from porn use to actual sexual relations?
Well, first, I would like to start out by saying, let's define what the problem is, right? Because inherently sex is not a problem. Sexual desire is not a problem. A lot of guys that I've seen in recovery, they'll quit porn and they'll be like 3 or 4 months clean. They'll be doing really great. I'm checking, like, they're clearing all markers on, my assessment for doing really well in recovery, and they'll be like, I desired my wife today. Oh no, am I relapsing? And I'm like, no, no, there's a big difference. Sexuality is inherently good. What I would say is the problem that you want to get away from, or what, I don't like that word, but yeah, for lacking a better word right now, it's getting away from that not intimate, not loved based, and that scratching an itch compulsive behavior because of negative emotions, right? Alexandra, I think you would agree with this. You don't want to engage in sex to run away from a bad emotion, right? To check out. Is that?
That is true, but I'm going to be nuanced in my response because there is a room for bad emotions and great sex. There are times when I'm having incredible sexual experiences and I'll just start sobbing. So great sex does not always mean happy emotions, but like really any kind of emotion. I'm distracted by the feedback. Do you mind muting Heather? It's your mic in particular. But I want to be in dialogue with you. It's just that now I can be, if you don't mind. So I just want to say that I think in addition to many other gifts or contributions, functions of sexuality is alchemizing what is in our emotions and in our body. So I just want to be nuanced in how I respond to your question, that there is a place for what is traditionally understood to be negative emotions within sex, but we don't want to be using sex as a distraction from those negative emotions, as a way of avoiding them, which is, I think, what you were pointing to, but I really wanted to presence both. And now please continue with what you were saying.
Yeah, and actually, I can jump in with a thought, Heather, that Alexandra Katehakis, who I believe she was here on the summit also, she has a chart of healthy sexuality versus addictive sexuality, which I think can be really helpful for people when they're trying to figure out, like, okay, is this something that is connecting me with my partner versus, something that I'm using as a, either I'm objectifying my partner or, I think of it as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I know, like, along the journey that can be really tricky for people because they want to have this connected sexuality. And I consider it porn influence. The difference between porn and other, quote unquote addictions or need to go to something to self-soothe is that, kids are finding porn and then kids are continuing a porn habit, a brain that's 8 that's exposed to porn, opposed to like most other drugs and behaviors. You don't find many 8-year-olds gambling. Like gambling is something that adults find. So like the child brain is being exposed to this. So it becomes the tool in the toolbox for self-soothing. And I really like that chart because it's like, okay, is it take or is it share? And obviously I simplified one of those things. And then along the journey, so many people are trying to get to that share point, but, they struggle with the back and forth of the taking. So I think it's trial and error. And I'm sure that's where Alexandra comes in helping people to be able to build that intimacy and not need the sexual, scenarios or fantasies or ideas that they were exposed to that made them feel good all along anymore. Now they can build a more rounded sex life. And, again, just going back to the simplified neuroscience of it, is that when you're in a highly pleasurable experience, people are looking for the highest dopamine that they can get. And when you're in a shared, pleasurable, but enjoyable sexual experience, they call it the happiness trifecta. It's rounded out dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin for connection. But that is a journey. That's a shift of going from high dopamine to that happiness trifecta.
Yeah, I'd like to. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that the person who asked the question clarified, if this is useful, saying that he's talking about having sexual anxiety, having used porn for so long as gratification that it's almost like he's forgotten how to make love with his wife.
So
So
I want to speak
Well,
to
he may
that.
never
And
actually known how, right?
yeah, so
You know.
I want to say that emerging out of porn addiction and pivoting into more meaningful, more intimate, more gratifying sexual relations with a spouse, or anybody for that matter, but we'll go with spouse, that it requires more intentionality and also more communication, not endless processing, which can dull the sexual chemistry, but just to be more intentional. And so I want to give a very specific thing you can try and see if it works. Also, saying that the single best positive predictor for long lasting happiness and sexual gratification in a marriage. This has nothing to do specifically with porn addiction. The best positive predictor is communicating with your spouse about the sex you're having and want to have. Because, of course, the vast majority of people are much more comfortable having sex than having a conversation about sex. So, this is highly valuable for anybody. But I want to also say very clearly that we can look at sexual activity with another person as essentially a feeling experience or a communication. And what I mean by that is that you can have good sex, which feels like I'm feeling tender today. Or you can have good sex, which says, let's have an adventure. Or you can have good sex, which is a communication of, I really cherish you. Or you can have good sex, which says, I want to feel more alive. Whatever it is, those are some variations. And so for the person who asked this question, one possibility, if you're able to have the conversation, is to say, what kind of communication do we want to make to one another? And then go ahead and have the sex that expresses that. And that creates a little bit of structure and lots of open-endedness. And it allows you to bridge the gap of disconnection, which naturally happens as you are healing from your porn addiction.
yeah, Nicole,
Yeah.
Nicole,
Oh.
didn't get to keep going.
I missed that. What did you say?
I was just saying you didn't get a chance to keep going when you had asked. You tipped it to Alexandra, and then it went around the circle, and you're sitting there still patiently waiting.
No, it's good. I wanted to have that discussion first, just so we can lay a foundation of like, what is it that we're actually saying you want to overcome? Because there's a lot of confusion on what that is. For me, a lot of it comes from actually just quitting porn or sexually addictive behaviors, compulsive behaviors, because we know that the brain does reset significantly. People who are experiencing death grip syndrome, so issues with having erections or being able to engage in intimacy, whether it's psychological or physical, because of these behaviors, that improves with just abstinence, just getting away from this stuff, clearing it from your brain. There's a lot of recovery work that can help that process, but getting away from it is the most important thing that you can do. And after that point, then you start working on trying to find that new and incredible healthy intimacy. So I'm guessing, in response to the question regarding a specific partner or a spouse, it's going to be learning to serve them more, learning to engage in conversation with them. When you're stressed, instead of turning to pornography, going into the closet, going into your own space, turn to your partner. Open up your emotions and in small ways. It can be scary at first, especially if you've had a toxic relationship or a very closed off relationship. Make those little steps to have that intimacy, that service, engage in other ways outside of just sexuality. And you'll start to see the difference between desiring to be with them because you love them and want to connect with them versus, hey, I'm having sexual urges. Let's get this over with.
Yeah. So let me speak from my own experience. Maybe this will help. Sorry, I don't know your name. All right. So when I want to second what Alexandra was mentioning. Communication was huge. when I could say, hey, I'm a little nervous about my size, I'm not sure I'm actually going to satisfy you, that was a really awkward conversation to have. But then my wife was able to say, no, I actually really enjoy it. She just doesn't enjoy it the way the people in the porn videos do. So my capacity to measure that was very, very different, because, you know, it was like Disney movies when I was growing up. So it was like kissing was everything. And then it was porn movies after that. And
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
you know, there's a certain expectation. And I didn't realize that my wife doesn't operate that way. And
Mhm.
so that the communication is huge. One of the things that I realized also is that my vocabulary was like the sexual vocabulary was the vocabulary of a sitcom, you know, like grunts and like 300 words versus Shakespeare, which is like 25,000 words. And so I was like, how can I increase the physical intimacy vocabulary between me and my wife? So I, like, when we went to bed, every time I would just have my hand touching her at some point in time, just so that there was physical contact. I would spend times during the day. I was a dork. I spent like 5 minutes a day just staring at her, like for a while, just being like, wow, who is this being? What does she look like? What did she think? Like, just trying to get to know her. And you know, we traded massages, like just on different parts of the body that were sore and stuff every day. And we held hands sometimes, or when we were sitting on the couch, we made sure that the legs were touching, or like there was a lot of things that we did so that there was all kinds of different touch. And then she wasn't as skittish about like, well, he's touching, so he wants to have sex, and I don't want to have sex all the time. And at the same time, I started to develop a certain confidence in like, these are things that feel really good. And it's an ongoing process. And I have had moments in sex where I've just broken out in tears because something healed inside of me because of something my wife did in the middle of it as we continued to explore. And the exploration has been slow and very like tentative all along the way, and it's beautiful. But you just kind of like increase your vocabulary of physical touch, and then I increased my vocabulary of communication. And sometimes the communication is hard, so we had to do it via email because I couldn't bear to look her in the eye while we were doing it. And email saved our marriage. So there's a lot of places to start. And then the part about like using porn for gratification, just a mention here is that one of the things that I work heavily with is the ability for people to separate their direct perception of something from their interpretation of it. And when you can start to see what's happening with pornography directly, like, oh wow, I'm holding a chunk of metal and glass and there's lights on a screen, and you know, if I were zoned out because I was thinking about something else, none of this would be affecting me. That's all that's happening. And all the rest is I'm doing. So I'm actually making all of this data into pornography, which gives me control over it. And I don't have to be controlled by the billboard. I don't have to be controlled by the advertisement. I don't have to be controlled by this little thing on the screen, because like it's just bits of blinking lights. And that dawns on me at a cellular level, all the way down through my whole body and not just in my brain, it no longer, like, the temptation goes away. And then now you have a really great clear platform for abstinence, which, as Heather mentioned, does really affect how your brain functions in a huge way. So
I just want to underline what you said, Bob, which I refer to as non sexual physical touch, especially in a marriage where porn addiction has happened and disconnection, both for your spouse and for you. Becoming more fluent and familiar with non sexual physical touch without it implying there's an orgasm for somebody. Just non sexual physical touch for its own sake is the nutrition that contributes to the better relationship, sexually speaking.
And
I
if
love
I
that. Let me
could,
jump in.
yeah, I'll add something
Trish,
when
I'll
you're done,
pass it to you
Taylor.
in one
Yeah,
second.
sounds great.
Perfect. So yeah, we've got a whack-a-mole question that I want to get to, but I want to continue this until we've until we've shared all we needed to. And there was an additional kind of supplemental question of love versus lust. Um, my initial thought on that was that this can get very confusing because, I mean, feel free to disagree with me, but in my experience, a sexually aroused state is a sexually aroused state. And so, like when I was growing up, I kind of thought that there was like the dirty stuff that happens in pornography, which feels a certain way, and then the holy, sacred stuff that happens, with a partner or something like that. And it felt odd to, feel sexually aroused in the presence of someone that I loved. when I was used to that being with, more distant relationships or through pornography itself. And so for like that feeling of arousal, I think is where it gets confusing. I think sometimes people are looking for like, this is probably going to feel different with my wife, right? But you guys are speaking to there's a lot of context around that sexual arousal. The pornography dynamic doesn't include as strong a relational element. It doesn't include the reciprocity. It doesn't include, shared history. It doesn't include, the full exchange of emotion. And so I think it does feel quite scary for people to learn how to feel that arousal state in the presence of another person, because it's such a vulnerable place. It's such a scary thing to experience, particularly, with someone that we care so deeply about. And so I just wanted to throw that in there, that the arousal state might still feel sexually arousing. And yet there is some context around it that makes it incredibly different when we're relating to, pornography versus when we're relating to, the person we live with. So
I want
Dr.
to.
Leigh, I wanted to follow up there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Alexandra, if you had a follow up, we can go
I
there. And then
do.
to
I
Dr.
just
Leigh.
want to speak to the woman in the heteronormative circumstance with the man who's porn addicted. The phenomenon that you just described is called the Madonna whore complex, although I wanted to define it because I used that once casually and people thought I was referring to the singer Madonna, and I am not. The Madonna whore complex refers to Madonna, meaning Mother Mary, this virginal creature, that virginal woman that is profoundly loved, versus the whore, which is where the sexuality happens and it's sinister and taboo and dark. And for the ensouled, evolved woman, she wants to be both and more than that. And it is really, really limiting to just interact with her as the Madonna. Some women may well want to be interacted with as a whore, but we don't have to go that far. But just that, I think it's really important to remember that your wife has a whole spectrum of sexual expression, which she may be yearning to express and have honored, or she may not have tapped into it yet. But this really is a journey that can be taken together in a man learning to honor his woman's sexuality. There's a lot in that process for both of them.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I love that. I remember reading that from Schnarch. The Madonna whore complex was the first time I ran across that concept. That's it exactly for my experience. Dr. Leigh?
I had a couple thoughts just to kind of pull some of everybody else's thoughts together. So the idea that Heather was saying about abstinence from porn, and and going back to A's question, because we're still on A's question, is that so abstinence from porn, unfortunately, much of that can be internalized into fantasy. And I know for a lot of men, probably most men, that internalized fantasy is what shows up in the bedroom because they don't know how to tone it down. And going to Alexandra's comments, and yours, Taylor, too, is that we're talking about how do we get to healthy sexuality, but men are coming out of hypersexuality. So by being able to bring that hypersexuality down and getting rid or shifting fantasy is really important from this high level of fantasy that is completely porn influenced, because just saying that porn doesn't include relational is really giving it a lot of credit. What it does involve is a lot of violence. It involves, a lot of genres that cross over people's moral boundaries. It's by design to give them very high levels of dopamine to keep them going and keep the clicks going and keep the downward spiral going. So the idea is, backing yourself out of that downward spiral of high level of fantasy and kind of adiosing the porn influenced hypersexuality to be able to meet your partner in healthy sexuality. And, Alexandra said this too, by this time, many people's partners are in a hyposexual mode. They're done with all of this. So it's like, how do we get a hyposexual woman and a hypersexual man to meet in the middle. And it's totally communication, but it's also understanding where each person is in this continuum of sexuality and kind of helping each other to be able to get to that place where it's no longer, all fantasy, but it's healthy fantasy or healthy intimacy. It can be fun and engaging, and it doesn't have to be scary anymore. Totally just necessitates, that communication. And I love what Bob said too. I tell people to write letters because, and I love email, like, don't even try to communicate with your partner, especially when you're in a really rough place. If your partner's really, coming out of porn, and we know, defense mechanisms of manipulation and lying and rationalizing and all of that, if you're trying to talk, everybody dysregulates and disintegrates. So by writing letters, it slows processing down everybody's part. And then, for if there is a fantasy piece, recognizing like that's got to go because it's internalized. I know when people, or it has to be shifted, it doesn't have to be, eliminated. I know for me, a lot of people, they say, I'm done with porn, but masturbation and fantasy, I haven't figured out how to manage that one. And that still becomes a secret sex life if your partner's not aware that you're masturbating to fantasy, which, Hebb's law says neurons that fire together, wire together. So you're still wiring in those patterns that bring you back to that porn influenced piece.
I would add one more piece to this, which is if it feels like this kind of sexual relationship is you need this for your own happiness, then there's some kind of connection to that needs to be addressed, because happiness is not only contingent upon sexuality. There's a vast spectrum of human experience that leads to joy, that when you're in that space, then you're not needy when you're in the bedroom. And then that opens up a totally different possibility in terms of experience, because it's now just this like we get to be together instead of no, we have to do this thing because this is the marker of this is what a good relationship looks like. This is how often we should have sex every week, or this is the kind of sex that you should have. All the comparisons that I had in my head, listening to other guys, them talking about their sex life, this guy bragging about that, and this, success. Oh, he's successful now and he has money and this is how he operates with all that stuff. That leads to, my wife did not know what I had in my brain, but her body knew what I had in my brain.
That's my point. That is totally my point, is that.
And it like was very resistant to it. And then as I kind of found joy outside of that, then her body stopped resisting, and then it was a very different conversation. So don't let all of your joy rest on sexuality.
In the Jordan Peterson and Andrew Huberman podcast where they talked about porn, I loved how Jordan Peterson said it's voyeurism. And it's so important to point out that a lot of the reason why people are struggling with intimacy issues, men are struggling with erectile issues or sexual issues when engaging with an actual partner, is because they've trained their brains to watch it as a third party and not actually have that engagement, interactive engagement. And it's a process. For some people, they just need a little, couple weeks, month porn reset, and that gets their systems working a little bit better. Not to optimal, but better. And then for other people, they really have to put in some of that work to figure out how to, especially I've worked with a lot of people that have only watched porn since they were a kid. Some of them have had zero sexual experiences. Others have had very limited sexual experiences with a partner. And you have to completely disconnect. The porn world is not going to be the relationship world. As you were saying, Bob, like there's so much in pornography that's not realistic. And even if it is, it's not you engaging and it's not your partner. And so people have to learn their partner and they have to learn themselves and allow that creativity. But it's a process. It can be done and relationships can be healed. And your wife or if you're, you have a female partner that's struggling, or, male partners sometimes, but that can be healed. It's going to take that time, and it's worth it to put in that effort and to keep trying.
Cool.
There's some, go ahead, Taylor.
Alexandra, share your thought. And then afterward, I'd love to get to this whack-a-mole question as well. But yeah, why don't you close this out?
Okay.
on this particular topic.
Well, building on what Heather said about porn being voyeurism, I think there's something that is normal, natural, native about male sexuality that is typically not appreciated, that the porn industry has tapped into and perverted with the voyeurism. And to put it quite frankly, there's a lot more get off for men in being the witness to their women's sexual pleasure than is conveyed in our societal conditioning, plus or minus porn. So, what that means is that both men and women expect men to need their orgasm to ejaculate, and that's, but if both men and women, and this is takes a lot of courage for women too, if both men and women, especially after porn addiction, but not only, put their attention on what the woman's experience is, on pacing things for her pleasure and her sensual presence, that really is a path to incredible sexual gratification for both people. And I really want to emphasize this, that if a man hears this and thinks, oh, okay, I'm going to make sure to prioritize my wife's pleasure and then I get some, that is not at all what I am saying. I'm saying prioritizing your woman's pleasure is your pleasure as you allow that to happen through feeling intimate and connected. And yes, then of course you get yours, but you're getting yours while she's really enjoying herself too.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, a lot. We've covered, like, we're ranging wide and far from the daily practices to how do we move from pornography to sexuality in a shared relational context. I'm loving this, and I hope it's really valuable. Just really quick, will this be available to view later? Yeah. So if you're here, that means you've got some VIP access, and later I'll be uploading these to the VIP product so that you can review them in the future as well. So.
I'm very intrigued. You keep referring to the whack-a-mole question. What is the whack-a-mole
Yeah,
question?
let's do it.
I'm like, what is it? What's popping up here? And what have we been slamming down?
Yeah. Well, so the question is essentially whack-a-mole, alcohol and porn, strategies different for both. And we can kind of expand, of course, Dr. Leigh, you and I talked a bit about broader electronics addiction and dependencies and so forth. And so, yeah, is there what's unique about pornography and what's similar to other compulsive or entrapping behaviors from your points of view?
Well, I think at least what I've already shared is that internalization of, most men will run their porn reels. And, one of my clients put it, I love the way that he put it, because he's like, you put an alcoholic in a room for 30 days, they come out sober. You put me in a room for 30 days, I come out the same or worse, because he's able to run all of it in his mind and create the same, neural mechanisms where when people have a different external behavior or a substance, there's more to it to be able to get that to that level of pleasure. And I think a conversation, which, everybody else can share about that, a conversation I would love to have here is alcohol as the great disinhibitor to porn, because I know that's where I resonate with a lot of clients, because porn disinhibits, alcohol disinhibits, or marijuana will disinhibit them, and then which allows them, or any really, yeah. And, then they're disinhibited, and then it's like the floodgates are open, and it really does become a slippery slope. So for many people, they have to address those behaviors to be able to realize what role they play. It's a slippery slope.
And do you find, just really quick, do you find that you apply similar strategies to substance use that you would porn, even though they're different, or are we adopting some new approaches entirely?
Yeah. And for me, at least, it's the neurological piece. So, I have the luxury of being able to see how people's brains are performing. So I am able to see the level of, dysfunction or dysregulation in a person's brain, which I will tell you, it tends to be, of course, it's different for all people because all these things exist on a continuum. But when people get deep into the porn world, it can be a highly dysregulated brain pattern that then makes people want alcohol because it's kind of a little lower level. It makes them want marijuana. That's, the conversation would be different if we were just talking about alcohol without porn. I think the introduction of porn into the discussion of the other co-addictions makes it different. So the approach has to include the porn piece, I guess is my point. It's like, we can't just go, oh, okay, the approach would be different for alcohol. Since we are here talking about porn, the most important thing is the relationship between all those behaviors.
Yeah. So this is what I call the difference between recovery and abstinence. You can be abstinent from pornography and still not recover. And some of the signs of that are going into other addictions, binge eating while you're in recovery, drinking more, using something else. So a lot of times, and a lot of people have experience with this, where they tried to quit alcohol and they found their porn consumption went up, or they tried to quit smoking and now all of a sudden they're binge eating and gaming more, whatever addictions a person struggles with. When you are, I literally I was on the phone this morning with somebody about this. When you are successfully doing the mental rewiring, you're doing the emotional work, you're doing the physical work, you're doing the psychological work, you're taking the steps to rechart your life, remap your entire life. We're not just talking about quitting porn. We're talking about changing your core values, your mental structures. When you actually change those things, you're not going to need any of these vices anymore. And that's the goal of real recovery. That's where you want to be. If you are just like rearranging which addictions and compulsive behaviors you're using, then we've got to dig deeper to figure out what the root cause is for all of these things so that you can get freedom from all of it simultaneously. And I have so many people who say, like, I had no idea pornography was the cause behind my weight problem. I'm like, well, we don't have like a scientific connection there, aside from the fact that the behavioral and the emotional underlying factors there then can lead to some of these other behaviors.
And it's also important to recognize, like, when you have a porn habit, it creates a dopamine deficiency in your life. And that goes back to what Bob said about depression. Like, so many people are depressed in their actual life because they've trained their brain to just get massive amounts of dopamine from porn. So now, like, life couldn't possibly compare, Disneyland versus real world. And that, it becomes like, then there's such a greater need for self-soothing when they're not in the screen. So that's where, in times when they can't watch porn, okay, then I'll have some alcohol. That'll soothe me while I'm here in the world, which not only has less dopamine, it has more cortisol because I'm even more stressed out now. And so all these behaviors become self-soothing mechanisms.
Yeah, so I'll speak from my own experience. One, no porn, so lots of sugar. No porn, so lots of screens. Nobody, like, yes, if you're just getting rid of an addiction because it's taboo and you're not aware of the other sort of like compulsive uses of, you eat 3 potato chips and suddenly the bag is gone kind of stuff, then you're kind of missing some of the stuff. What I would say to the question of like, what are the strategies? It's the same strategy for me. So my training and my explorations led me to like training with Russian special operatives and all of these other people because I was interested in retraining my instincts around things. So I'm in the woods fighting with knives and underwater and all these stuff. I'm experiencing stressful states while catching my body in its stress response to those states and having it readjust so that in normal stress states, it doesn't operate that way. In the middle of that, I had a teacher who was like, yeah, he trained himself to fight unconscious. And that's what I was after. It's this unconscious competence, this capacity for my body to handle all of it. And what's it handling? It's not handling porn. It's not handling alcohol usage. What it's handling are all the drivers. So like, it's a lot easier to get out of the way of a train when it's a mile off and you hear the whistle. But if you've got your headphones in, you're jamming, you're looking at the ground, and you're standing on the train tracks, and you only notice it because like you turn your head to the left and it's 10 feet away, you're going to get hit by it every time. So to develop the internal awareness inside of where your body starts to become uncomfortable, and I mean this in the most basic sense of the term. It could be physical discomfort, it could be dehydration, it could be hunger, it could be emotional discomfort, any of it. And if you learn to pay it like as soon as you catch, wow, I'm a little uncomfortable, and you start to address the discomfort right as it shows up, not only do you get out of harm's way really quickly, but you no longer get to the point where you're having to deal with like, what do I do about porn, what do I do about alcohol, because you feel wonderful the whole time. So the strategy that I deal with everybody is we deal with the pornography at times, we have to look at the perception, we deal with the alcohol, but everybody I'm pulling back down past their core limiting beliefs, past all the thought processes, back down to where did you get uncomfortable. Then if we have to look at a thought, we'll look at it. But what's the discomfort, and can you just dissipate it from there in that place? Then your body develops that as a muscle memory, and then you're just free on automatic. And then one day you're like, holy cow, I handled that differently and I didn't even think about it. And that's freedom for me. That's
Yeah,
what I was
I
at.
love it. That's retraining. You know, we know that the number one reason people use porn is stress. Number two is boredom. But I would contend boredom is actually lack of overstimulation. But you know, you're retraining people to have a different stress response, because in porn use, you know, we know that most times it's fight or flight or freeze or fawn, but for most men it's flight into porn. So a stressor comes and they've been trained, if you have a porn habit, to flee into porn to feel better. And if you can stay in that moment of stress and learn how to deal with it in a different way, then there's no longer a need to
Yeah.
flee. And that's really,
What's
I
nice
love it.
though, you can train it without having to like stay in the moment of stress with porn. So
Oh, yeah, exactly.
like
100%.
what we have people do, you know, like we're dealing with them very physically. We're getting them into places where they experience stress and then they dissipate the stress, and then they experience stress and they dissipate it, and they discover it's like this most empowering thing when they discover, holy cow, I'm actually okay in this space. I had a teacher once who was like, okay, what do you do when someone pulls a knife on you? And you know, everybody says the same answer, run, right? And he's like, cool, that's awesome. Who here's a good runner? And they pick somebody from the crowd. And he's like, somebody give me a knife. So he grabs the knife and he's like,
Go.
run now. It was a training knife, thankfully. The guy hesitates. He doesn't know what to do, which happens all the time. Freeze first, then fight or flee. And then he starts booking, and the teacher has slashed him a few times. He's like, look, you assume a lot. You assume a lot when you say, oh, if a knife shows up, run. Because you assume, one, the person, you saw the person, you assumed that they didn't have a gun too, you assume they didn't have a buddy, you assume there were no obstacles in the way of your path, you assume that the exit actually isn't behind the guy with a knife, and you also assume that you didn't have family and friends to protect. Like there's a lot you're assuming, so you better learn to deal with the knife. And it just so happens that it turns out that when you learn to deal with a knife, like a real physical knife, you also happen to learn how to deal with your stress and your emotions and your anger and all your other stuff really well. Because you argue with a knife, you get cut. You argue with another human, sometimes you get away with it. And so it's
Yeah,
a really
sometimes.
great capacity. Like it's a really great way to train something across I'm training a knife here, but across the way, I'm training this other skill without realizing it, because I'm dealing with training my body to handle its basic discomfort.
I have a
So
Yeah,
the
and
question
strategy,
for you,
Taylor.
Bob. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
I
go
have
ahead,
a question.
Alexander.
Okay, thanks. I have a question which is, it may seem tangential, but it's actually pertinent to this conversation as I understand it. So I have a number of clients who are ex-military or maybe currently military, but in the military for 20, 25 years. And so, and of course, there are many men who aren't military, but I'll just use that as an example. And so they have learned to keep their emotional expression unflappable in times of stress. However, the consequence of that is that they aren't actually connected with their emotions and presence and healthy sexuality and the capacity for intimacy and all the things that we, of course, want to help people access. So I totally believe you when you say what you're saying, how learning to be not stressed in the face of that knife allows ease and relaxation in the context of stress. But would you tie it into the people who have that training in their work life, not in the context of recovery and healing as you do it? And what is the difference there? What can someone like that learn?
Yeah, so the difference is in the training itself. So the people that I deal with who are like either first responders or security personnel, or they got a lot of post trauma and all this other stuff. The military basically teaches like two emotions, yes sir and F you, and so um it's not that those people don't laugh, it's not that they don't have a good time, and it's not that they aren't sensitive, but they've learned that like showing emotion creates weakness, and they've learned a bunch of other things. The difference is they've learned to suppress those, whereas the training that I went through, and the training is really like high level special operative kind of training, and combined with a lot of the other training, is how to become free of them, how to release it so it is not there. So it's not, oh, I can keep my emotions in check. It's that the emotions dissipate and I'm simply free in a moment where there may be a knife, or there may be a wife that has having a hard day and is blaming me for it, or a child who's having a meltdown. And in all those cases, it's not that I am not feeling, it's that the feelings come and go and I am not identified with them. This is part of it. And I recognize that those feelings that they're expressing is their expression of their experience. And it's easier for me to pull someone up from heaven than to stand in hell below them and push from the bottom. And so like when I work with them, I have to work through a lot of layers of physical tissue. And there's a lot of interesting research kind of coming out around how, because the memory bank, we haven't found a memory bank in the human system, that it seems like possibly the memory of trauma and pain and all this past history that people have is located in the connective tissues of the body, and the
Yes.
fascia and the stuff that's
Yes.
around them. And that's simply because the brain has that as data, and it's like, oh, that's still there, and I've associated that with this event or whatnot. And so as the tissue releases, as the body relaxes, the brain now no longer has the input that says we should have this thought. And so with them, I'm working a lot on relaxing, and it's not about being strong in a situation. Being strong is actually being weak, because now you're using your energy to to make a shield, instead of having all of that energy available to move or do what's needed in a given situation. So the
Yeah,
measure of your
and
strength is not how much
it's
you can lift, but what's available to you at any given moment. Go ahead, Trish.
yeah,
Let me jump in actually.
sure,
So, Dr. Leigh, I'd love to
yeah,
hear from you, Heather, if you have any thoughts. And then, just because of time, I think we'll be right there where I'll need to close this out at that
sure.
point.
Yeah, I
Cool.
just
So,
wanted to
yeah.
say that everything that Alexandra and Bob are talking about is autonomic nervous system dysfunction. Like, it's at the cellular level, like Bob's talking about. It's at the brain level. It's unconscious. So especially for military personnel, but for everybody else, and for people who are wrapped up in a porn habit, what happens is very slowly over time, the nervous system recalibrates itself to like misgrade stress, basically. So, the nervous system's always running hot, but you don't feel it anymore. And that's that overstimulated nervous system. So then it's very difficult to feel when your nervous system is constantly in hyperarousal and it's hyper vigilant all the time. You can't be in a place where you know what your emotions are. And it's not even like, it's learned at an unconscious level, not at a conscious level. So if you ask a person to feel, they can't even feel, because their system is so dysregulated, and it's using all this hot, fast energy that makes it, impossible in that state. And then, that's why I said Bob's got the bottom down and I have the bottom up, and I have the top down approach. Those approaches work so beautifully together. And there's a lot of body work portions to the program that I offer. But the idea is we have to calm the entire nervous system down. But when you do, guess what's there? All the feelings that Alexandra is talking about. And then they're there to be felt. And you have to learn how to feel them, and realize you're not going to die. And you don't have to run back into the screen. You can feel them. And then, better yet, if you can approach and engage what's creating those feelings for you. And, I'm always encouraging people, as I'm sure you all are, to get on purpose in their work, find that connection and intimacy in their relationship, start doing their hobbies again, do all the things you love. And if you have a rounded out life that's on purpose, then what happens is literally your nervous system comes back down into the middle, and you learn how to feel again, and you don't have to be in this hypervigilant state. And then you don't need alcohol. Going back to the question, you don't need alcohol, because the reason you need alcohol is because your nervous system's so overstimulated. What alcohol does, what porn does, is very artificially shift your nervous system into neutral. It's all jacked up, and really quick, you put something in, dopamine or a substance, shifts you way down. But then tragically, it keeps you way down when you're not doing that thing anymore.
Did I answer your question, Alexandra? All the way?
Certainly, for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to follow up with you. And I loved your answer. And I think it's the ultimate answer to the whack-a-mole question. But please go ahead, Heather, because I need to leave in 2 minutes and just want to give a heads up. I'm going to be doing that whether we're done or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I want to bring this back full circle to the original discussion of the daily work. And the question kind of is, some guys ask, like, why, or women as well. I don't mean to. I work with men, so then I sometimes but men will ask, like, why do I feel so mentally and even physically numb? It's because you've used pornography and sexual behaviors to numb yourself. You don't like the emotion you're feeling, you numb it. You don't like the stress, you numb it. And when you are constantly numbing yourself to both positive and negative emotions, that's the result. I posted on social media recently, if you are trying to numb all of what you perceive as negative emotions, you're also numbing your capacity for joy, for the positive emotions. And so porn, very much like alcohol, when people are using pornography, they're using it when they're bored, like alcohol. An alcoholic, when they're bored, when they're stressed, when they're lonely, they use alcohol. Same with pornography. You're using it when you're bored, lonely, stressed. And the most important thing is, well, not the most important thing, but one really important element of recovery is to take care of yourself. Do things you enjoy, have hobbies, stress relieve in a healthy way. These daily things that you do to take care of your emotions in a healthy way, to unwind, is so important as a part of the daily work.
Cool. Well, I want to close this out quick so we can get to our next things. But there's a part of me that wants to keep talking for another couple of hours. So this has been awesome. I know there's at least one more question in the chat. I wrote it down so that in future Q&As and Wednesday's panel discussion, I've got the option to bring that forward as well. But I love this. This is like, I'm a dork, but this is dorky fun for me. Just talking about all these concepts and ideas in this way. And so for viewers, I hope that this has been beneficial. This is one where maybe a few replays where you kind of, glean what you need to from each pass from it. And thanks to everyone, all of you guys for joining this discussion panel. This is a really cool move. I'm glad we could pull it off and get it on the calendar. So thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, no problem. It was nice spending time with you all.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, everybody. I learned a lot.
Oh, there goes Alexandra.
So cool.
She said she was out.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll stay in touch. And thanks again. I really loved the discussion. So appreciate it. And we'll see you around.
Yeah, sounds great. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.